Mr. Daniel Steinman, before we went on the short break, we did elaborate more, or you elaborated more on the PSCE, that is the private sector credit extension. But of course, you left us with a question, or rather a statement that we need some clarity on. And to my understanding, you just need to elaborate further on that if the private sector does not borrow, that means that there is no investment, and that also means that there is no growth, right? So on that, I would really just want you to elaborate or explain to us further.
Elsbeth, you have to recognize the anomaly. And this is that if the government is very confident about their expenses, like we've just seen in the budget, growing it by nearly 10 billion on the premise of one item that grew, not the overall economy. That this is what I explained about the SACU transfer. It was unexpected, and it was disproportionately big. It shouldn't have been that big, although I'm the last one to say, hey, don't give us that money. We need every cent that we can get for development. But it created a certain conundrum in the sense that it upset the budgetary pattern that we have had for the last 3 years, or at least during COVID and since COVID. Because if you look at the budget, you can very clearly see the effect of COVID in 2020, where we had a almost negative 8% implosion. The economy actually got smaller. And then in 2022, the economy grew a little bit. I think the official figure is 2.7% or something. But if you, this is what I explained about what is a low base effect. If you come from -8 and you plus 2.7, you're still very far below zero.
Yeah.
You see, so 2021 was just a consolidation year, and in the budget speech, the minister also indicated it as a budget of consolidation. And 2022 was very similar, no fireworks, but we were all surprised by the growth, which came to 4%. Now that is significant. That starts to be solid growth, And now we get to this I call it an anomaly. It's not a statistical anomaly. It's more like an operational or perhaps a policy thing.
Okay.
If the private sector were so confident about this latest budget, we would not have seen a reduction in PSCE in the statistics from December to January or January to February. Now, granted, the official February figure is not out yet, but it will not be better than January. It will also be there in the region of 2.6 or even a little less.
Okay.
For one very simple reason. The private sector is suffering from a lack of confidence, business confidence. They don't want to go borrow. Now we come with a very positive budget, and it'll be very interesting to see how the PSCE statistic, the demand for credit in the private sector, how it improves and to what extent it improves, and if it improves at all. Because that will give us an indication of what we can expect towards the end of 2023. But as it stands now, the red light that is flashing and that we need to take cognizance of is the fact that there's a divergence between the direction of the government budget, very positive, growing expenditures by more than 12%, and the private sector not borrowing, no confidence, not investing, and when the private sector does not invest, it means there is no growth. Now, if you look at the bigger economic picture, what we see is a very classic example of crowding out. And that big word simply means that the government is now becoming the economy.
Yeah.
Again, one has to be realistic. There are certain economic aspects for which the government has to accept the responsibility, both for financing it and for making sure that the projects get done.
Yeah.
But you know what the problem is? If you add CMAS, nearly 75% of the government expenses go into salaries. It is consumed. Remember, it is not invested. And I've often spoken about this.
Yes, you have.
That the moment that you have to go borrow money to pay your salaries, it means that you are neglecting your investments. It means that you're not growing the economy. And now we get to the point where we see the expenditures of the government going up, the investment by the private sector going down. There's this very obvious divergence, and it shows that the government is slowly, classically crowding out the private sector. And if that continues, we are going to grow. I can tell you now. Only for as long as we can borrow.
Yeah.
And if you look at the horrible statistics on where we stand with government debt, it means that the road left before we get to the end of our ability to borrow is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And if we don't rectify that imbalance now, when we get to that point that the government can no longer contribute to the economy, the private sector would be weak. And then there's nothing, or not a strong enough player to take over the growth of the economy.
Okay, so that is my understanding, but also, Mr. Daniel Steinman, from an economist view in relation to the budget for 2023 to 2024, are you saying that like we started in the beginning, that people are quite impressed with the budget? Do you think that after this that you have just shared, do you think that people will still be impressed with the budget?
I don't think so, Elsie, and I hope they take note of what I said. You know, the big increase in the SACO transfer is a very good opportunity that we have missed.
Yeah.
Instead of increasing our expenditure, we should have used that money to reduce our debt. So that we can continue to borrow from the capital market for a longer period until the economy has had the chance to pick up. And the economy will only pick up long term if the private sector shares the confidence of the government that it will continue to grow.
Definitely.
At this moment, we sit with a serious imbalance, and if we continue on this path, our economy is actually digging itself into a corner.
Okay. Well, on that note, Mr. Daniel Steinman, I can certainly tell the listeners that there is more to the budget than just allocation to the ministries. So we need to dig a little bit deeper and try to understand. But of course, that's why Mr. Daniel Steinman is here weekly on EconoChat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman to clarify things for us. And with that said, thank you so much for keeping it locked to the power station. You can, of course, go to economist.com.na for previous conversations and just keep it locked all the way. From me, Elsie Tibinyani, I say goodbye to you.